That's true, because if you will see official reports, what is happening with the religious persecutions in Russia, everyone who is not the Russian Orthodox Church basically prosecuted, and a lot of people are in jails, and it's a huge materials on that. And coming back to the question in Ukraine, what you mentioned, just maybe, I don't know if that's to add a little bit, is that in Ukraine, that's what probably not clear for the American society, is that the Orthodox Church in Ukraine was always like under the Moscow Patriarchate and Kiev Patriarchate. And that was obviously like the questions about the Moscow Patriarchate, because we understand that they do the operations, intelligence operations through the church. That's why, as far as I understand, there was an ask for the Moscow Patriarchate to cut all the ties with Russia, basically not to have these operations on Ukrainian ground while we have a war. But instead, we see that's what you just described, right? That these false narratives that they use to, saying that Ukraine persecute Christians and that it's anti-Christian, anti-religions, and so on and so forth. But that's the operation that we can see like nowadays, and disinformation that they're trying to spread.
I would say that 2 or 3 years ago, the Russians were having a lot of success in that space. I think it's the counter efforts to educate Americans have been successful, I think, because we're seeing like the support for Ukraine has risen actually in, for example, among Republican voters. I think part of that is because, not just Ukraine, in fact, the Ukrainian government, I don't even know if it's the driving force. I think a lot of Americans who are aware of what's going on have been trying to communicate. I go around the country and I give talks about what's happening in Russia, Ukraine, and this question would often come up with people that would ask, is it true that the Ukrainians are persecuting Christians? And I walk them through some of the facts, and I try and cite, you can look here and look for, facts. And other people have been doing the same thing. And I think you gave me a great example of somebody who was anti-Ukrainian before he went to Ukraine. And then he came back and said, wait a minute, like my eyes have been opened. It's a completely different story. It's unfortunate that people, it's not easy to go to Ukraine right now. But if most people would go there, they would see that there's no persecution. I've never experienced that at all. So, and honestly, I think most Ukrainians just want to live their lives and they don't really care. They may be religious, but I've never seen any disrespect for other religions. What I see is a people that are as far from being Nazis as you can imagine, and just trying to live their lives, and pretty happy people actually, despite the fact that their country is being bombarded by their neighbor. They're pretty resilient, but pretty happy and friendly and welcoming people. So the narrative that Ukraine is, run by Nazis and anti-religious, that's a false narrative for sure.
That's true. And talking about the example that I gave you, maybe just for the audience, because they all know and see the speeches of Pastor Mark Burns. So that was the one that I told you about, and that's pretty much a great example.